King. All right, we're live.
We don't even have to be live. I'm just saying if you're going live.
Yeah, well, let's.
Then we'll go live.
Yeah, we should be live.
Word.
Cool. So we were just talking about Disney Star Wars.
Yeah, I just after watching Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, it just makes me wonder what the heck the Lord and Miller solo could have been.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
But I mean, I thought the solo was fine. I didn't hate it or anything. What the heck? But Johnny and I saw that one in the theater too, and we all when we left. Here's the difference. When we left The Last Jedi, we stood around in the parking lot and talked about it for 30 minutes. When we left Solo, we went to a restaurant to eat, and we sat there and we're like, yeah, it was pretty good. And then we played games for 2 hours. That was the sequence of events.
Yeah.
That was the end of the conversation. We're like, all right, well, that happened. Moving on.
Fair. So you found more meat on the bones, probably for Solo. It's weird. I think each of the Disney Star Wars definitely has a different taste. I mean, I think about how I watched Rogue One, and I was like, I want the sequel to this movie now. And then I was like, wait, I saw the sequel. I know exactly what happens next. Wait.
But you wanted more of those characters, I think.
Absolutely.
And that was the bummer, is that they killed. But to be fair, I think Rogue One took some good chances. So
yeah, that's part of the risk, isn't it?
Yeah. I've come to the position that I think with Star Wars, it's gotten so big that it's impossible for it to be good and take chances. It's The Last Jedi was its first attempt at what if we upset the apple cart a little bit, and then everyone lost their freaking minds. And it's just if that's what's going to happen every time we do something that's kind of different or dangerous or dare to touch the sanctity of these characters, people just lose their minds. And I'm just worried it's going to be doomed to this very boring, stale, safe place. And I don't know. I just don't want it to be safe. We've got enough safe stuff. Let's do some cool stuff.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And I wonder a bit, knowing that they're bringing on the guys who produced Game of Thrones, for instance, to do sort of an unnamed, set of films and stories for it. I wonder if as they move on from the Skywalker saga, that they become more willing to take chances outside of kind of the stuff that audiences were most familiar with.
Maybe.
Maybe that's their saving grace, kind of having that extended universe thing go on. But they've got to establish an extended universe, which so far it's just mostly been movies that rotate around original trilogy events.
Right. And I think, honestly, if The Last Jedi did one thing differently, I think all the conversation would have gone away. And that was, don't kill Luke.
I think that's right.
If you don't kill Luke, no one cares. But I also think Luke isn't dead. I think there's something else going on there. I think he's kind of ascended to some godlike force thing or something. But I don't think he died in the sense of the way Obi-Wan dies or anything like that.
Kind of what Qui-Gon implies, or is implied about Qui-Gon, that he's kind of ascended to a higher plane of the Force, and that, that's then given him greater abilities or some such.
Yeah, I mean,
he's got to be dead. I think he's got to, because they transferred him from. I mean, he's not the hero. Rey is, and if he's transitioned to the Obi-Wan figure, but then switches back to being the hero again, I think that's going to be even more confusion in that trilogy.
But I think that's part of the mistake that we're making, is that Rey is the main character. I mean, this is all hypothesis, right? But the fact that J.J. Abrams got hired on for Episode 9. Are you ever going to bring Johnny back on, Matt, or is just Johnny not?
Oh, unfortunately, he has to unmute himself.
Oh, I thought you had to unmute him.
For those of you just tuning in, Jonny Jimison has been banished from this conversation until he can mind his manners.
He was smacking into the mic, and I just figured his sake.
Get done with an apple.
Embarrassment.
But J.J. Abrams said after he took over Episode 9 that a very specific thing he said is that we have to make this a satisfying conclusion to the Skywalker saga. And at that point, if you think of it, if Rey can't be the point.
Yeah.
She's not a Skywalker unless there's going to pull some nonsense, which maybe they do. But
from a certain point of view, right? As they say.
I just think she's not. But
no, I don't think she is.
One of the more interesting like theories around her though is like, what if she is a clone of Luke? And where they came up with that one, like, here's the thing. It's a cool theory when you talk about it. When you think about the possibility of it being executed, you think, man, you guys just jumped the shark super hard.
Yeah,
for sure.
But like, there are some interesting things going on in the story that give you pause to say maybe that is a possibility, because on Jakku, where Rey was from, that was one of the major Imperial facilities, and it was also a place where the Emperor was storing his final cloning facilities. And Rey,
deep lore.
Yes. And when Luke's hand was cut off, his hand went missing, and also his lightsaber was found. So the idea being that they cloned Luke from Luke's hand. And that's why Rey is responding to the lightsaber, why she has the whole vision of everything Luke went through, like why all that stuff happened, is that she's basically him as a clone. I don't think that's what it is, but
these movies are so much more simpler, than I think most fans even want for some reason. But
well, and plus we already got the great proverbial Luke clone story from Timothy Zahn, who had Grand Admiral Thrawn cloning all these people, and the evil Luke clone got an extra U in his name, and that was crazy cool.
Yeah.
So here's to the Legends canon OGs. Slightly relevant, but pivoting the subject just a tiny bit. I'm a very diehard Star Trek fan, guys, and I attempted, as an English teacher, which is my profession, outside of comics, to write a research paper to convince my students that Star Trek is superior to Star Wars, knowing full well that they would overthrow me. And so I loaded it with the most fallacious arguments possible, and you have never seen students be so engaged in a research paper in their lives, because they were going through just rending me apart. It was hilarious. I loved it.
Smart.
And I was like, and this is how you do MLA formatting. Good. Okay, now use this. Which Star Trek's going through a bit of a renaissance too. They've got the show on CBS All Access, Discovery, that again had sort of an unconventional start, but is being a lot more classic in its approach now. And it's an exciting time to be a science fiction fan, I think. Yeah. Dune is getting adapted. Have you guys ever read the Dune books, just out of curiosity?
No.
No.
I was a big fan of the old computer game.
As a kid.
Yeah. They're super weird. Like, they're basically like organic science fiction. Like, technology really does not matter so much as like the powers of the human mind. It's nuts. Like, just weird nuts kind of stuff.
Yeah. Very French, if I remember right.
Yeah, it was written by an American guy, but I think the approach would be very well described as like French and kind of European.
I think it was French. Oh, okay.
Well, it was Frank Herbert was an American guy. He struggled to get it published, and a company that published like auto manuals of all things picked up Dune, and it took off in a big way. But here's the thing to be excited about. This may be the French connection here. The guy who directed Blade Runner 2049 and Arrival is directing the Dune adaptation, and so that's going to be very lush and kind of artistic and I think interesting, probably.
That's a good choice.
That was probably my favorite movie of 2017.
Which one?
Blade Runner?
The new Blade Runner.
Gosh, yeah.
That was so amazing.
Yeah, I dug it.
Yeah,
I don't know that I loved it the way other people loved it, but I liked it.
Yeah. I mean, I can understand where people are just like, okay.
Yeah, I think it's good. I just don't know. It's like it's not. It's all right. It's fine. But I was never a big fan of the original Blade Runner either. And I've tried watching it so many times, and I love Ridley Scott's stuff, but I just I can't get through it. It's like, this is not for me.
Yeah, I think a lot of the appeal of the original Blade Runner is the atmosphere. I mean, you boil it down to its parts, it's a detective noir, but it's the rainy, kind of dreary, smoggy LA, and the like giant billboards and the spinners, and I think there's so much like texture and uncomfortable environment there. I think that captures the imagination so much.
Sure.
Yeah, and it's one of those sit in the parking lot for a while afterwards and piece together what actually happened kind of stories. I feel like there's actually something there to tease apart.
Excuse me.
Sure. I think it kind of works like Miyazaki does for me, I think, in that regard. And I've seen one Miyazaki film. But when I watched Princess Mononoke, I was like, I don't know if my words can process what my eyes saw. Like, there's something very, very visual and very kind of spatial and artistic happening here that, like, it's going to take a while to make it concrete.
Sounds like you saw every Miyazaki movie.
Well, like my initial, I'm sorry, I'm going back to Dune a little bit here, but like my initial introduction to Dune was the old arcade, the old computer game that was like in the same Command and Conquer type feel, like the RTS style game, and I just remember being like so excited because like I was like, oh, these are books and there's movies, and then I remember watching it and being like, that was kind of boring, like because
the David Lynch one,
yeah,
that was the David Lynch version. That was trippy.
It's got some good stuff, some weird things going on in there.
No doubt, absolutely. Have you guys ever looked into the aborted version that was going to happen in the 1970s?
No.
I saw like a YouTube video on it.
Yeah, there's a great documentary called Jodorowsky's Dune. If you get a chance to check it out, but basically Alejandro Jodorowsky is this really eccentric, weird, I think Chilean filmmaker, and he was trying to put together a budget to make a Dune adaptation that would have come out 2 years before Star Wars, and you would have had Salvador Dali as the emperor. You would have had who else was going to be in this thing? And Dali was so expensive they were going to create a robot clone of him to fill the rest of his part in the movie. He would have had like 18 minutes. Orson Welles was going to be Baron Harkonnen. You were going to have Mick Jagger be like the main antagonist. I mean, like they were going to throw a glam rock adaptation, and the people they got to work on the film, H.R. Geiger was going to be the production designer. They got Moebius to do designs for the film as well. And when the project fell apart, like that basically became the team that Ridley Scott snatched for Alien. And so from the seeds of that film, there's kind of a hypothesis that like a lot of other good science fiction came out of the pieces that were assembled for that never made movie, because that talent got into Hollywood and started producing concepts and kind of different ideas.
Man, the Alien franchise is one that I'm glad has been sort of taken back and doing some good stuff with it. Even though I was actually really massively disappointed in Covenant, I still appreciated the fact that like it tried to do some smart things, but it wasn't just like, hey, let's get everybody in a room as fast as possible and let aliens kill them. It was like trying to have an interesting conversation, which, for all the flack people give stuff like Prometheus, I think Prometheus is a really good movie. It's not without its flaws, but I still really enjoy it. But where I watch most of my frustration with Covenant was it was supposed to be a sequel to Prometheus, and instead it was a Alien prequel, like a true Alien prequel, and I was just like, this is boring. Like, I don't care about a robot with a god complex. I want to know who these engineers are. I want to know what the heck they're doing. Like, why did they turn on them? But the only real solace I have is that we still got to get to a place where a ship crashes on LV-426 in a engineer vehicle full of aliens. So like, we're not there yet. So maybe
there's like more to be done.
Hey, but you took like this amazing character that Noomi Rapace played, and Elizabeth Shaw, and you just like,
didn't they kill her off or something?
Yeah, like
off screen,
off screen, no less. Yeah,
that's terrible.
There's like they made like a special bonus clip where you like saw her and David on their trip to the engineer planet, but you didn't actually get to see her make it there, and that was tough. I guess that's where,
bummer.
Maybe to make it more applicable, I think one of the reasons people were disappointed with Prometheus is because it wasn't an Alien prequel, in a true sense, and so I think there was pressure on Scott to go back and kind of make an Alien prequel out of Covenant. And
I think he took the things that people liked about Prometheus, for better or worse, like Michael Fassbender and stuff.
Yeah.
And rethought his whole approach.
Yeah, what's funny is if you have the Prometheus Arda book, he even goes out of his way to say, like, no one wants to see the xenomorph anymore. It's been done. It's not scary anymore. I didn't want him to go back there.
Right.
And he makes an entire movie that's like the actual like least horrifying version of a xenomorph. Like, at no point was I ever like, man, these things are dangerous. Like,
right.
I don't know. It just.
Well, I think that prompts a good question. Then, I mean, here we are. We're people who want to create stories.
Mm-hmm.
I think you look at a Ridley Scott who gets a certain level of success, and he's got to decide: do I take those risks? Do I weave when people expect me to go straight? And if I screw it up, am I obligated to go back and make a crowd pleaser? I mean, what do you guys think about that? Like, when you get into a situation like that, was Ridley Scott wise to go back and try to do a crowd pleaser, or should he have kept kind of following his impulses to see where they went?
He's in a business. It's a commercial field. I think he needs to surprise the audience in ways that they're expecting, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And he's got to know how to strike that balance, and he does know how to with so many movies. He knows how to.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, let's not also act like Prometheus didn't make money. Like, it made money.
That's
like,
fair.
No, for sure, it was a successful film.
Yeah, so it's just weird to me. Like, Alien is never going to be like Titanic level money or something, because it's just a rated R movie it's a horror. It's got two things going against it. One, it's rated R. Two, it's well, hold up. Actually, let me take a look. Its production budget was $130 million, but it made only $126 million domestically, but globally it made $403 million.
So they made a profit on the film,
right?
They just didn't make maybe the profit they were banking on, or maybe the tracking had suggested.
Maybe, I don't know. But I mean, I look at a guy like M. Night, for instance, who I think has sort of rediscovered himself by the fact that he kind of doesn't care what anybody thinks anymore, and he's just doing whatever the heck he wants. Like, I was talking to some people about the ending of Glass today, which I won't ruin for people who haven't seen it, but it's such a daring ending to that whole thing in my mind, and I just love that he's just sort of like, I don't care what you think. This is how I always intended this to end. Deal with it,
Mm-hmm.
So I always think I don't know. I've been thinking about that a lot. I don't know that I like the idea of creating crowd pleasers anymore. I don't know. At least right now.
Right.
I want just good stuff.
Which is fair. And you've got to take some risks.
Trick. Like, what? Yeah, like, how do you please a crowd,
I don't know if you can. Like, and I mean, you can, but are you going to make anything that's like particularly revolutionary by doing it?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
It's a fair question. One thing that me and my English team scrapped this year was Charles Dickens. We were making kids read Great Expectations in the advanced class, and we felt like we were just murdering them with a book. So we said no more of this year. But when I look back and think about Great Expectations, that was a huge crowd pleaser, like serial installments, and people would come back to it. And Dickens had that ability to hit the common man, but also say something evocative. And I mean, that's not to say the guy didn't have failures. He definitely had books that went nowhere. So I maybe there's some finite balance. I don't know what the principles are that lead you there. I'm sure if those could be codified, there'd be a million Hollywood screenwriters trying to sell The Secret in courses and workshops. I don't know.
At the end of the day, though, the reason, it might have been like this. Basically, they go back to, Prometheus comes out. It has a $130 million budget, which is a big budget.
Right.
And it doesn't go gangbusters the way they want, even though $430 million is good money. I mean, you got to figure they turn a profit. But the money is really what determines the risks that get taken.
Sure.
So the reason why guys like M. Night or even Jordan Peele, I think, are finding some success in the horror genre is because they have perfected in the horror genre through the Blumhouse system this idea of spending next to no money to make it. And then they I think what they basically do is they only spend what the money they need to get the movie made, and then everybody else who's a talent on the contract gets residuals based on the performance of the film.
Well, that's smart.
So they're able to kind of go gangbusters and just go nuts. Like The Visit, for instance, was a $5 million movie, made $100 million. And then Split was a $10 million movie. He made $280 million. And then Glass was a $20 million movie, and it's already tracking for around 290 million as well. So like they're able to take some chances because the upfront money is so small. It's not, if they only did 100 million, they still made way more than their money back. So I think that's where maybe the issue is something like Alien comes along, where it's like, hey, if we're going to drop 130 million on this, you better make everyone happy.
The ROI needs to be there, so make more of a crowd pleaser. Interesting. Right. So you have more risks and more freedom when you've got less budget or maybe less stakeholders who are investing in the project.
Yeah, for sure.
That's why it's a good idea for us to be independent cartoonists.
Oh, for sure.
I like it. Here's the thesis for the night. But I think that also kind of brings up one of the beauties of comics is that we don't have a budget except for our artistic skill.
Yep.
So that's why part of the fun of looking at Matt's KYRIE is that we can have Lawrence of Arabia meets Indiana Jones, no problem. All it takes is Matt's sweat equity.
Yeah.
And great historical research.
That's what I always tell kids when I do school visits. I always tell them that, I always tell them the problem with making a movie is, if we were going to make Adamsville Book 1 into a movie, we probably need at least $60 million, to do it some decent justice from a special effects standpoint. And
right,
we're going to need we're going to need a few extra, maybe 100, if not 1,000 plus people to help us make this happen, if not more than that. And I was like, I could just never make this story if I was doing it that way. But with a comic, my budget is how much time am I willing to spend, trying to help them understand that, there really is a lot of freedom in making comics.
That's a good word. I know, Michael, you've been working hard on Sleepover and getting it in front of some folks. I just kind of want to hear from the horse's mouth. How are you feeling about the project and the story and the way it's shaping up?
It's going really well. I haven't talked about it on social media at all, but I signed with a literary agent a couple weeks ago.
Congratulations!
Yeah, thanks, man. I've been meaning to ping Jonny about it, but so sorry, man. I figured find out. So yeah, I signed with a literary agent a couple weeks ago. We're hammering all of the pitch out. She had a couple minor suggestions. She loves what I gave her. She just wanted me to add some more examples of what the scary stuff looks like. And so I drew in a 10-page sequence kind of showing what the scary stuff looks like. And right now I'm just waiting for her to write me back and tell me she likes it. But it's going well. It's going in the right direction. Yeah, I can expand upon that to any other greater level of specificity, but that's where it's at the moment.
No, that's huge. I mean, that means she'll be shopping it around, and multiple people will have eyes on it. Is Steven in the comments?
Yeah, he is.
Steven and his beautiful ink lines. I'm serious, guys. Did you see the pages Jonny colored for Steven?
I did.
Yeah, those are great.
Thanks. It's too much fun to work on for sure.
I
want to do more.
When did it get in your head? You're like, I could do this really cool color job with Steven's stuff. And then I'll shut up and stop taking over Matt's live stream. Sorry.
No. It's ours. It's our live stream.
It's your thing. Do what you want to do.
That's right. But no, Jonny, when did you think, oh man, it'd be so fun to put some colors on Steven's stuff?
Well, I've put colors on his stuff before, and just sketches and stuff. But there's I have this fantasy series that I'm working on right now, but there's a space series that I have planned for after this fantasy series is over. I've always wanted Steven to ink it. So we were just casually tossing around thoughts of we should collaborate, we should draw this thing or that thing. We were just chatting last week, and I tossed out the idea of maybe I could exchange coloring your book in exchange for you inking some space pages, since neither one of us has the money to hire the other. So it was just a thought, and then as soon as that popped into my head, I was like, no, I need to color some pages of Steven's graphic novel, because I love his ink work.
Oh my gosh, no doubt.
Good stuff.
You can't have him for your space book until we are done with our Killer Children short story that I am so behind penciling pages on. Sorry, Steven. But that's supposed to be done by like April. So after that, he's all yours. Which
get on it,
there's
guys.
An anthology. I know there's an anthology that we're trying to get work in that hasn't been announced yet, but will be kickstarted at some point, and it deals with like gun violence stuff. And so Steven's inking the story that our friend Caleb Bolenbacher wrote about kind of this post-apocalyptic future, and there's no adults left, and it's just kids at war. And is there which is more valuable, mercy or being merciless in that kind of world? So there's lots of like gunplay and shooting and creepy environments, and Steven's just bringing so much mood and texture, and it's a masterclass to like see his stuff. It's so good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Whenever I see his inks, they remind me of woodblock prints, stuff like that. Almost has a Renaissance level of detail.
Yep, fine
definitely.
Detail.
Yeah. Super good etching. It's kind of amazing.
We were when we were chatting about the space story, I was saying the reason I want him to ink that is because I want to get more of his flavor into that story, because my background is in classic newspaper comic strips, and that comes through in my artwork. But his background, he's a student of the classic Marvel comics.
Oh,
so I want to get a little more of that comic book adventure feel.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, unrelated. Sorry, we can go back to this. But Johnny, are you doing Amelia Island this weekend?
I am not.
Okay, I figured you weren't, but
is that a regular trip y'all do, or?
Usually, this year is the first year. I think I don't know if you were you there last year, Johnny? I can't remember. I don't think you were.
Yeah, I was there last year.
Okay. Then this is the first year I've been the only one who'll be there, so that'll be a little bit of sadness. But
is that it's like a library expo kind of thing?
That's a book festival.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The local one. It's a good one though. It's does pretty well, and their authors in school program is really a treat to be able to be a part of.
Cool.
That's cool.
Yeah, Johnny's talked that up. It sounds like a good opportunity.
Is it in Jacksonville?
In Amelia Island, which is about 45 minutes or so away from here.
You guys have islands?
Yeah, man. We're on the coast. What do you think?
I don't know. I didn't take Florida history because my state used to be a country. They devoted a lot of time to that in my education. I'm so sorry. And unfortunately, I'm not a retired individual who can go to Florida yet. I don't know. But I will say this. I would be there in a heartbeat if somehow I could like arrange it to go to a show with you guys. I feel like that would be quite a lot of fun.
Oh, man.
We've talked about this before.
Yep.
Yeah. Should totally come.
Yeah.
I would do it.
Dude, I'm bummed out I didn't take you up on the ALA thing. It just was not a good time for me to do it.
No worries, man. And you've done that show before. That was like no unknown thing here. I think it's interesting. I will say, getting to go to the American Library Association show last year, there were a lot of comics publisher personnel walking the floor, and the ALA announced an initiative to like put some resources behind graphic novels for kids. So the buzz is really blowing up for like kids graphic novels, which is an arena that we all somewhat touch. I think all of our work could be acceptable and enjoyed by a young audience. I would say, Matt, you're not explicitly writing for like a YA or middle grade group, but your book would totally be readable and enjoyable by that crew. So I think we're definitely in a cool place and time in the comics industry when there are some challenges to like direct market retailing, but our stuff's more geared for like a space where lots of readers are going to be coming.
Yeah, it's definitely a space where I see kind of a lot more announcements. I follow a lot of literary agents on Twitter who support graphic novels and publishers who support graphic novels, and I see a lot of kind of publishing deal announcements that hey, a new book sold to this place, a new book sold to that place, and even so when I signed on with the agent a couple of weeks ago, I actually had 2 agencies want the book, and so I had to decide between the 2 of them.
It's a good problem to have.
Yeah, it was a good problem to have. But the one I passed on actually was based out of Seattle, and they were just at the midwinter conference for ALA,
Oh,
and
cool.
that was kind of the thing they kept saying is they're like, every publisher wants graphic novels. Every publisher wants graphic novels. And I'm like, well, we're in a good space then.
You're like, I've got a graphic novel.
Well,
You can
that's why
get
she
my
was already.
graphic
That's why she was already talking to me. But,
you know, I guess along those lines, Michael, Matt and I have talked about like the benefit of agents, and currently we're working on contracts where we don't have an agent behind those. I mean, do you think that hunger is there for independent creators? Like, if we've got a good pitch, do you think there'd be people who are out there to look at that kind of thing?
For sure. I think, excuse me. I think the challenge is there's just not a lot of good stuff out there that's geared, and I'm not saying present company included. I'm just saying in general, the challenge for them. Like I was asking Elena, who's my agent, about it, and I said, hey, something I've kind of noticed is I've noticed that a lot of agents that I like, every single published comics creator that I know of, they got their agent after their book deal was offered to them. So like a publisher said, hey, we want to publish your book, and then they went and got an agent on the back end of that. And I said, I was like, it feels like a lot of times it feels like it's very opportunistic, and meaning that I think that the industry is still trying to figure out like how to work with this. Like they're not. I think a lot of traditional publishers don't quite know like what's involved in pitching a comic book to a publisher.
Like how risky is it, I guess?
Yeah, like what's the financial uptick on it? And I think it's getting more and more stable, but I think they're just not quite sure what to do with it yet. But there's definitely a hunger for it, but it's tough. I don't know. I would expand to greater specificity on some of that, but we're live streaming, so I could always share with that y'all after.
No, that's fair.
I don't want to tell too many tales outside of school, but it was an interesting discussion. That basically the idea is like they're still struggling with like, what do we do with this genre or medium? How do we represent it? How do we pitch it? A lot of them don't even know like what do we need to give to the publishers. So like in one scenario, I was asked to basically write the entire book of the Sleepover out, like have a finished draft, full-fledged pitch. They were like, we won't pitch it to publishers until you give us that. And I'm like, no publisher I've ever heard of asked for a finished script and a finished, like they want a proposal.
Yeah.
That's all they want. Yeah. But they don't know that.
Right. Well, because revising comics is such an intensive process. I mean, you revise a prose manuscript, you're going back into a Word document, and that's fine. But revising a comic manuscript, like if it's drawn, that's a lot more time invested, and you're slipping on a production date there.
Yep. And and there's usually most editors I've heard talk about it are like, we don't even know if it's going to be good until we see what the art looks like. So what difference does it matter what the script is? Like, they can't, and a lot of us aren't particularly good script writers, so our scripts can be fairly lackluster, but when we execute it with art, it looks so much better. You know what I mean?
Well, and I think that's why I think there's a trend of major publishing houses. They either publish like writer cartoonists, or they publish like a previously known quantity author paired up with an illustrator. But I don't think you've got like newcomer writers paired up with an illustrator doing major publisher house graphic novels.
It's pretty rare.
It's not that I can think of.
Yeah. It's pretty rare, if anything. But I mean, so the problem is with getting an agent in the comic space is there's only like 5 of them really that like their focus is comics. The rest of them are sort of
publishers, or
I mean like literary agents.
Like agents who will shop it to a publisher.
Well, I mean like literary agents who have really good experience in the comic space.
Yeah.
There's plenty of agents that are interested in it, but not plenty of agents that have strong experience in it. And the agency I signed with is Pippin Properties, and they represent Jason Reynolds, Catherine Applegate. I think
Animorphs. You're being repped by the same people who rep the lady from Animorphs.
Yep. Actually, my agent is the same agent as the agent for the lady from Animorphs. Right. And
voice.
Yeah, right. And Catherine DiCamillo, I believe, as well is one of them. I have to double check that, but I don't want to speak. Kate DiCamillo, she's one of them as well. The click here. These people. These are the titles they represent. Kathy Applett, Catherine Applegate, Jeannie Atkins, Mariana Bear. Some pretty well-established folks. But the reason I bring this up is like they have some experience in the graphic novel space. Like if I go to the illustrator section, the guy who does Catstronauts, my agent represents him. What's his name? Dang it. David Small.
Oh, wow. Stitches.
He's
pretty well received.
He's repped by Holly, who's the head of the company. But the idea being like, you know, when I talked with Elena about like, how are we going to pitch this thing? She's like, yeah, all we need is a proposal, you know, that sort of thing. So they at least know like what the heck they're up to. You know what I mean?
That's good. That's good.
And so I think the challenge is like, yes, there's a hunger for it, but not everybody knows what the heck to do with it. You know?
Gotcha.
So that's my long-winded answering that.
Be wise.
That's the sort of thing that gets me. Maybe I just worry too much, but I tend to think like, I don't know, like people repping comics, like that's been a thing since, like, I guess like comics have been like a serious literary genre since like the 80s, I guess, maybe.
Sure.
Like Mouse and stuff.
I think that's fair.
Sometimes I wonder if like 100 years from now, people are going to be having conversations exactly like this, like, things are starting to look up for comics. You know what I mean? Like, they're always going to be like this weird like side venture that looks really snazzy, you know, and has a lot of like impact and appeal when someone actually figures it out. But how to actually get to the point where you've got a successful thing on the shelves,
right?
I think that's always scared people off, and it probably always will.
That's fair. I think particularly in North America, where we don't have a lot of institutional tradition behind comics. And I think
outside of superhero stuff.
Well, the challenge too is it seems like, I don't know if you remember a couple of years ago when Scholastic was doing their contest to try to find talent.
Yes, I do.
And I think really what the issue is like I think they're starting to get enough homegrown success stories. Where like they're like, we have some set books that sell well, but they're a big, they took a long time to make, and whereas like an author who writes a novel might disappear for 6 months, we might need 2 years, you know. And two, there's just not a lot of people in the United States who are committed enough to the craft at a high enough level to be accomplishing this. So like it's like that's essentially why what I was kind of led to believe, like why Scholastic ended up doing this is like they're like, we're trying to encourage some of these people to come out of the woodwork that are good at this, because they're like, we believe they're out there, but we'd like to see some of them. So
sure.
But I do think the conversation has changed a lot though. Like, I mean, 30 years ago, if I showed up in school with a comic book in my hand, it was going to get confiscated and I was going to get in trouble. Now I get invited to come speak to schools on a fairly regular basis. So there is,
that's a good point.
You know, there's a change in the air for sure, in the right direction.
Yeah. And I mean, you've got, what's the big statistic cited about Dave Pilkey's Dogman books, that they're printing like 5 million copies at a run. And this is a generation that's enjoying comic storytelling, that if good comics continue to be put in front of them, they can enjoy well into their adult years, and they won't be necessarily bent towards one genre. Like superheroes won't necessarily be the only game in town. And I think the greater diversity you have in genre, the greater strength you have in the stories that you can tell.
Yeah.
So I look forward to that. I don't know. I definitely would love to continue to work in the kids graphic novel space and to make work that makes a mark. I certainly think I myself have some leveling up to do in terms of my draftsmanship and my storytelling. And comics it's a slow way to learn on the job.
And honestly, like that's why I took a year off last year, and I was just like, I don't want to make comics. I want to focus on getting better. I want to hone some of my weaknesses. I want to focus on writing, because when you're in the middle of a book, like, you don't have time to grow. At least I didn't, and not with a full-time job, and I'm trying to make a comic and hit deadlines. Like, when do I have the time to sit down and go, like, how do I draw a person sitting? Like, there's a whole level of thinking you got to go into with that. And so taking a year off to just go, like, I want to make something that when people look at it, they're immediately like, dang, that's good.
Yes.
You know, and that's really what my focus was. So when I handed off the sleepover, I was so thankful for the first time, you guys, like in 10 years of doing this on any sort of big level. The first comment I was receiving was, dang, the art is awesome. And I was like, finally,
that's great.
I got to because that's normally not the compliment I get. Usually people are like, oh yeah, the art's fine and the story's really cool.
You're such a good writer, you know?
Right.
And you're like, thanks.
Well, that does mean yeah. I mean, I like that compliment, but I'm like, dang it. I mean, the art is so integral to this. Like, you gotta get the art up. And
no question. I think no, that's a good point. You definitely it is nice to have that inflection time. Sorry, Johnny, go ahead.
Yes,
I was just going to say the flip side of that is that there's always leveling up to do.
Sure.
So you never
but if you're focused on it, it happens a lot faster.
Right.
One thing I did this past year to try to get a little mileage, and Matt and Johnny know that I've reached out on a couple of occasions to say, okay, I need some critiques now. Like, tell me what's wonky about my practice. But I reached out to a guy who works with Periscope. They're an artist group out in Portland. His name's Jesse Ham. And I love Jesse. He's got a great like art tips Twitter, like tips from Jesse Ham. And he's a believer too. It's so good. Great resources. And guy's a believer too. So he's actually working on a story for a publisher called Cave Pictures. A Christian believer. It's going to be called Blessed Machine. But I was like, Jesse, I'll pay you some money if you'll critique my work. Tell me what's wrong. And he gave me a lot of good, just like honest, blunt feedback in terms of, you know, these heads look really big on your bodies, and these backgrounds are not convincing. And
I was wondering where you got that brutal critique from.
Yeah, it was Jesse, and I was really thankful that he did, because I mean, I want those eyes that can tell me here's where your stuff falls short of pro level, because I want to get there. I don't want to deceive myself that I'm there now. But I want to get there. That's the destination. That we're training ugly to get to that point. So
the practice I found to really help me boost up was I started trying. I'll say this, the caveat. My goal was a sketchbook a month. I'm still on my first sketchbook 3 months later. But when I did start sitting down and going like, okay, I'm going to focus on drawing feet better. I'm going to draw like just and not just drawing feet, but like focusing on like what is the construction like? Why does it do what it does? Like, and starting to think through that, like I just started seeing pieces come together in my head so much faster, and it made such a difference, I think, in the way my pitch was looking, because it just, I don't know, it just came together nicely. So I think at the end of the day, it's really, I think, intentional focused practice. And if you're practicing comics, like the muscle you're flexing, I think, like what Johnny was saying, when we're drawing, or we're always learning, the muscle I think we flex when we make comics is we're flexing the muscle of storytelling. But if you're on any sort of deadline, you're not spending a ton of time going like, is the arm right? Is there a better way to draw that arm? What if I don't like the way I draw eyes now? What if I should change the way I draw eyes? And like part of the challenge with something like a series, like, you know, you're doing, like all of us were doing with ours, and when I was doing Adamsville, is like you kind of get locked into a style until you finish. And so you can't really explore because you have to keep the visual language the same. And that's the thing that frustrated me the most, is I was 7 years in Adamsville. I was like, I don't want to draw like this anymore. But I have to draw like this, because if I don't, it's going to look weird.
Yeah, it's got to be of a piece. I think that's why I see some established or seasoned folks recommending to newer people now, hey, you know, start with short projects. Don't go for your opus first. And I'm like, oh, man. But at the same time,
it's not the instinct for sure.
Yeah. And I think it works out in the end. There's a pleasure that comes from looking at a guy like Barry Windsor Smith, who drew Conan comics in the 1970s for Marvel, and they were just like detailed and lovingly hatched, and the anatomy was very guessed, like it was not based on real observation. And so he goes away, comes back, and just has this like blow you away kind of pre-Raphaelite style that he develops after like a long period of intensive study. And it's kind of a pleasure to watch the guy's work evolve. Like that's the upside. When you've got a body of work established over time, those ugly babies can become very charming because they represent milestones of growth. I think it sucks to be in that trench while you're making your way forward.
I agree.
But you're right. That's definitely a difficulty, especially like Ben, like you have a strong interest in. I mean, you like all kinds of things, but I'd say that comics, the history of comics, and the artists who have been instrumental in comics more than anyone I know. And you're interested in learning styles from those comic artists, probably more than anyone I know. And that's interesting to me because I'm thinking, you're not just thinking about how to be a good artist, you're thinking about how to learn. I mean, I would think this would just kind of naturally flow from looking at specific comic artists. Like you're trying to learn how to take similar shortcuts, maybe, or shortcuts.
Oh, yes.
That doesn't sound like the positive thing I mean, but like how to shorthand, how to get the story told well.
Yeah.
The way the greats did, you're not just looking at like illustrators or something or fine artists.
Right. And maybe that's limiting in some ways too. I mean, we all kind of have our places we come from. I mean, Michael, I know your inspirations are very much horror, and I think you've got a great eye and a love for film. I mean, Johnny's talked about your love for newspaper strips and kind of classic cartooning and adventure stuff. And I mean, Matt, I think you're the only one of us who has like a legit art education that's informed your skill set and your sensibilities. And I think some of it too is like having shop talk like this where we can start trading those influences. And I can be like, oh man, Johnny's so into Disney animators. Maybe I really should give, Glenn Keane a second look and see what's up with this guy.
Give Glenn Keane a second look.
Oh, you need to give him all the looks.
Here's a question I wanted to have for you tonight. Who was the better Disney animator, Glenn Keane or Milt Kahl? Like, those
are my two favorites, so that's tough.
I mean, I know there were different eras of Disney animators as well. They weren't working at the same time necessarily, but
I have no strong opinion on this.
Milt's technically the better, and I think Glenn would say that too. Like he's the better animator in terms of like understanding the technical side of the craft, I guess. Being able to reproduce that effectively, like on command, and Glenn's the he's the dreamer, I guess, the one who's exploring and being weird and pushing things and thinking about fine art and looking at all these eclectic influences and stuff like that. And he's probably the better. He comes out the more famous one as a result because he's just so charismatic. Milt Kahl is kind of a jerk.
Oh, for real?
I think that's my impression from interviews and stuff.
Get out of here, guys. Let me draw.
Yeah, exactly.
And maybe that might be a handicap that I put on myself, getting my diet primarily from comics artists.
Jerk, is you a jerk?
I am a jerk. Well, I think because I look at comics artists so much, I think I'm also not finding anything that would make me stand out among a crowd of comics artists. Whereas somebody who understands a different craft or different discipline can bring something new into the field, and that can become remarkable. So I've got to figure out a way to work with that as well.
Well, I think it's like one of the things that really just stuck with me when I finished Adamsville was, like I was saying, like people don't. I occasionally get a handful of people to be like, "Man, your art is really great," but it was never like people I admired exactly. Like it was like my readers, which was always nice from them. But I was like, man, what is it that makes a guy like Nicholas Cole? Like you see his art and you're just like, holy cow, that dude knows what the heck he's doing. And there's no doubt in your mind he's great at it. And I was like, I just want to get to that place where I make art and people are like, holy cow. There's no debating on whether it's really good or not. And but I do think it's sort of like taking all those different influences, pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone, going, hey, what if I add, some Glenn Keane to my style? What if I add some? But I was like looking at like guys like Glenn Keane. I was also looking at who's some of the other the girl who does Night Lights.
Alvarez.
Yeah. I was looking at her. I was also looking at Matteo Scalera, who does Black Science and Avengers and all that. And like, just trying to because there's stuff about Matteo Scalera's work that I love, like his detail and his rendering, but also like the simplistic beauty of the Night Lights book, and then like the gesture of Glenn Keane, and like you're sort of Frankensteining this monster of a style together of all these disparate elements of things that you appreciate, and but that just kind of eventually you just have to allow yourself that deep dive. I think like it may feel like a bummer to set aside and say, you know what, I'm going to disappear for 6 months to a year, but think of how much it catapults you forward when you come back. If that makes sense. Like I don't think The Sleepover would have sold had I not spent a year trying to figure out still hasn't sold, but I don't think it would have gone as smoothly as it's going had I not spent a year trying to figure out what my art was going to look like, make changes, like conscious changes to it, that sort of thing.
Wow, that's fair. That's a good point.
Well, like for instance, you spotting blacks now is really interesting.
Yeah,
you're doing that really well.
It was a really concerted effort to go like, I want to think in that in general. Like now when I'm approaching my pages, so much of my focus before was like, I can let the color do some of the work for me. Yeah. And now like, no, if it doesn't work without the color, it's not working,
Yeah.
It needs to be better. But
shadows are not my friend. I will not do that. I'm just kidding. No, I think that does anchor a page. And I think kind of on the flip side, I know we all kind of switch between digital and traditional in our processes, but like a nice traditionally drawn page with like spotted blacks looks really good, and can be like a nice like secondary art market kind of thing.
Yeah.
So there's benefit in that technique. There's no doubt.
I think it just looks like more substantial, almost like it looks like a heavier page, when it's physically out there, and it probably goes for more. You could probably sell it for more.
I'm going to make this character's shirt black right now, and I'm going to do it in real time so you guys can see. Make this more valuable.
I can't see anything right now. It's just your head talking.
Yeah.
Are you supposed to be screen sharing?
Has it been my head the whole time?
For at least like the last 20 minutes.
Oh no!
Wait, my head's been the only thing that we see?
No.
Oh,
it's
okay.
just when it comes to seeing you, I just see your head.
I have very good hair, guys.
Yeah.
I want you to see that.
This is true.
I don't know nothing about hair because I'm bald.
You know what? I ain't know nothing about spot and blacks, and you've got an agent. So there we go.
Well,
oh man, I do feel like I probably should use some dandruff shampoo now that you guys have seen this so up close.
Well, not your head. It's like your avatar. It's not you.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not even broadcasting me?
No.
Oh.
Yeah, it's like your camera's off.
It's because I was on low power mode.
Oh, that'll do it.
I gotta plug it in. Okay, well, I'm glad you could at least hear my charming voice and see my beautiful wife.
Mm-hmm.
Is that's the avatar picture? Yeah. Let me show you. Okay, well, speaking of my beautiful wife, I promised her that I would go, like, be invested in our relationship, but I will show you what I was working on real quick before I, try to be responsible. Marriage. What brings us together today? Okay, let me turn off my low power mode. You should have a visual back on my end.
Here's maybe a question for you, Kat.
There we go. That's what I'm doing. Yeah, put some black on that.
Maybe a question. That was good.
Yes.
I've seen better.
I'm just working analog.
See that nice page.
Here, look, it's so good, guys. What? Wonderful.
Oh, man, I'm gonna
look at all this. Look at all that blue line right there.
There's
Oh,
green.
man. Figuring out my environments. Okay, Matt, you're too good at camels.
I'm already kind of tired of camels, which sucks because I got to draw like
I know you
100
picked the
panels of
wrong
them.
book to work on.
I know, right? Yeah.
It's like me with horses.
Oh,
yeah.
gosh.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm
One of my
sure.
main characters is a talking horse, and I started on the book, and I was like, this was a bad choice.
I immediately regret everything.
Oh, man. Yep, those are the painful lessons.
Ben, do you think I have a spotting blacks question? So I don't think I've ever been into Western comics until like Flight Anthology, and so I've never developed an eye for what legitimately like really makes Western comics shine, and I think spotted blacks is one of the language tools of Western comics that like European comics. I'm thinking about Western as opposed to European.
Right.
I mean manga does like anything and everything, but
sure.
Like so, I've never pushed myself to even try and get to know spotted black. I didn't even know that phrase until like this year. Or, I mean last year. But for you, like that's something like is that what spotted blacks is? Like that's like one of the like top shelf, like if you're gonna be a legit comics art, like if you're gonna be doing the craft on the level that you want, like you need to learn that tool. Is that how you feel about it? Curious.
I think more so shadows than spotted blacks, because I think good spotted blacks come from good cast shadows. So I've got to get better at how I cast light on my forms and volume. I think here's the big deal behind spotted blacks. They work well to hide inconsistencies in like newsprint registry. You're talking like early 1940s kind of pulpy comics.
So that's the reason, yeah.
Yeah, like if the color ink shifts, a big spotted black or a thick outline can hide that. And it's also something that Milt Caniff, who did Terry and the Pirates, and what was his other one that was really big? Steve Canyon. He was super huge influence to a generation of artists. He was a strip artist, but he was famous for his huge spotted blacks and just this kind of like recklessly slashing line. And you can even see it in European guys like Hugo Pratt. But I think because that visual language was so influential to all the wannabes who ended up in comic books, and they incorporated that into their language, it just became part and parcel of what American comics looked like. Like
interesting.
They're digesting Milt Caniff stuff, via Jack Kirby and those really great practitioners of the craft and the superhero scene.
Yeah.
There was even there's a French artist named Ledron who was trying to get work in the American comic scene, and he has this just lush, hatched, open line work. And it wasn't until he deliberately aped Jack Kirby that he started getting Marvel Comics assignments. So even this proficient draftsman, stylistically wasn't fitting in until he was borrowing kind of that foreshortening and the heavy black stuff.
So even that's a function of the limits of the printing industry, I guess, at the time.
Yeah, definitely.
Interesting.
And really shouldn't apply to comics now. I mean, because printing's advanced so much and so much is digital. But yeah, I think that's one of those weird artifacts.
Yeah, it's one of the strengths and weaknesses, I feel like, of comics nowadays, is that it, like, relative to how the craft used to be, it seems like, we all get this impression that we can do you spend time on a comic and you realize how limited you really are. But like compared to how they were, like it just seems like you can do anything and everything. And so you don't have those constraints that force you to overcome, like you don't have this goal of I don't know, there's no ceiling to reach towards, I guess. So maybe people just kind of rest on style, I guess, on like what's hot,
Yeah,
because there's nothing to like hang your hat on in terms of like how far can I push this and that. Now I'm just asking like what's the cool way to push this and that. that makes sense. I don't know.
No,
That's
I
probably
think
just BS. But.
I don't think it is. I've been looking at some 90s Marvel comics to get some visual pointers from a guy named Sal Buscema, who was a journeyman artist and could just produce work quickly. And he was competing at the time that the like Image Comics dudes came out with their like really finely hatched line work. And you look at a lot of Marvel books from that period, and you see a lot of journeyman artists kind of being forced to put so many more lines in their pieces because that's what the hot Image look was. And that's what they had to do to stay competitive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I guess that, I mean, you would know more than I would, but I guess the printing capability by the 90s
had advanced.
So advanced that you could really, I mean, the doors were blown open. So people just went nuts with detail.
And part of that was oh gosh, we're going to get terribly boring. I'll be brief. I think part of that was the direct comics market too. Like you had a collector's market open up in addition to newsstand. And so those collectors would be willing to shell out a little bit extra for a book that had a nicer paper stock and a better printing process.
So
prestige, the prestige format, yeah, exactly. So I think that motivated some of that too. History of comics with Ben. I would bore you all night long if you guys wanted, but I also find it really.
We got to do like a series on that or something. That would be really interesting.
Oh my gosh!
Just interview you about the subject. If you need.
I mean, I think that I'm with you on the Spotted Blacks piece to like understanding like obviously some practical reasons for why it exists, but also I think if you look at why even like black and white films, certain directors would be more successful than others is their ability to use that sort of contrast in simple black structures. I mean, like if you look at an Akira Kurosawa film, you're like, holy crap.
Yeah,
this guy knows what the heck he's doing, you know.
My favorites,
and or even just noir films. The way, like, I think what Spotted Blacks end up helping you do is sort of draw interest and contrast in a much stronger way. But obviously, I think the limitations of the printing, like you don't need black to do it anymore. You could do it with color.
Sure.
But I think when a page is constructed around the idea of it, it's a stronger page. Like, real strong silhouettes, real strong. I think it's just composition at the end of the day. But
I don't entirely. It's like I agree with you in theory, but then I wonder why, like the Lean Claire style, which is still like, you know, has KYRIE's purchase in Europe, like just was completely blind to Spotted Blacks, you know, like, and it's just something I'm thinking out loud. Like, why would they, you know, if you took the color out and you just looked at the line work, it would look like a, you know, airplane instruction manual or something.
Those are fair points. I think maybe some of it was the color printing process was so good in Europe for the 1010 books.
Maybe. Yeah.
You know, they do a lot of lush watercolor in there. Maybe they knew they had access to the technology. I mean, it is a good point. You have high contrast in an image, and it's going to naturally work better than an image with low contrast. I mean, the human eye is just going to register things.
Yeah, it's a better composition for sure.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah. So I guess, you know, if you have the benefit of color to create that contrast, then cool. But when in doubt, you always have more black to create that contrast if that color is lacking.
Right.
Maybe it's it's just like a sensibility thing. Like, even in kids comics, we've always been gone for the dramatic in American storytelling, and the you know, and the epic and the bold and the you know, exciting and over the top. And so in Spotting Blacks helps you push that, you know, that excitement, and maybe European comics are a little more toned down. So
that's fair.
Subdued.
That's fair. Not much hyperbole.
My entry to Spotted Blacks, and the reason I started integrating them wasn't from action stories. It was from Calvin and Hobbes.
Oh, that's a good point.
Watterson used a lot of big chunks of black. He didn't always use them, but when he did, it was from sort of a graphic design standpoint to make each panel have like a good balance. If there's a lot of white space on one side, he'd have a darker object on the other side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and that's a good point. I think about the last Calvin and Hobbes strip, and what's the scenario? They ride off into the snow, you know? Mm-hmm. That's about as much white as you can get into a comic, but he knew exactly what he was doing because he'd been playing with those values for so long. Like, I don't know, that's a really good point, Johnny.
Yeah, I think I just found that the pages where I've spent more time thinking about my line work and creating a sense of contrast within my line work without color or even grayscale, all that stuff, that when I add those elements, it happens so much easier and it looks way more purposeful.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think any one of them is particularly bad. I just think like I get there faster when I think through spotted blacks. Yeah. And it's more of a, like if I haven't thought through that process all the way, and I think even if you are going to use color to get there, like in your thumbnail process, thinking about like what's the silhouettes look like in these panels, like what's that sort of thinking, I think works really well in the long run. It helps a lot by the time you finish it.
Yeah. Then here's what I'm going to do. I do need to roll off in a second, so I'm going to go and I'm going to write on my arms, "Don't attack the black." And I'm going to attribute it to Michael Regina. And I'm going to practice using some blacks this week, and we are going to see how this makes a difference. That'd be good. That'll be my homework.
Do it.
Hey, guys, thanks for letting me join you for a little bit. I really appreciate it. Please keep entertaining the people who are watching. Yeah, absolutely.
Have a good night.
We'll see you, Kat, soon. Last Jedi rules.
It does really.
Good night.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
It's current year. Movie's so 2017.
Man, second best Star Wars movie ever.
At least
light the internet on fire. Do what?
At least you're not saying it's number one.
No.
That would be.
Nothing can dethrone Empire, I don't think. Yeah. Which is funny because I think Empire is probably like the most unwieldy of the films. It doesn't really follow any actual thread. Like,
yeah, it feels like controlled chaos kind of.
Yeah, there's like, what's the point of that movie anyway? Like when you go through it, you're like, what is the point of this thing? There's really nothing really ever actually happens. I mean, I don't know.
The point is space is awesome.
Yeah, exactly. That's all it needs to be. To be fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. After I heard an interview with Ryan Johnson where he basically said, he was like, to me, the best movie is a movie where half the people leave the theater and they love it, and the other half leaves the movie and think it's the worst thing they've ever seen. And I was like, all right, well, why are we all fighting each other? This was intentional. This is just the way he wanted this to work. So you don't like it, you don't like it. If you like it, you like it. Move on.
Yeah.
I have friends I can't even talk about Star Wars with because they get so riled up about it.
Ugh.
And I'm just like, dude, I was talking to you about Solo. Why are we back on to Last Jedi?
No, it's funny. Like I don't know if there's anyone. I don't think I know anyone who shares my opinions of The Last Jedi. Like I've seen, the critique videos and all this, but I don't think I agree. Like I don't want a superhero Luke. It's almost like, to me, it just feels like they're trying to have their cake and eat it too. They're trying to deeply draw from the well, thematically setting up shots and scenes and plot, and all this kind of thing. Like they're trying to draw from the well of the original trilogy, but they're also trying to remix it in a way that is still somehow surprising, I guess. And they're trying to give you all these old like heritage characters and all this kind of stuff, and it's and give you the fan service, and yet at the same time subvert all that at the and I just don't know how it feels like it's been pulled for two movies in two different directions, particularly with Last Jedi. And so you're gonna tear things apart, at least in the fan community, because you didn't pick one. You know what I mean? Like they didn't have to have any of the original characters if they didn't want.
Right.
Like they wanted to showcase them, and yet we've already got these main characters that are supposed to be interesting, but because the legacy characters have taken up so much time, the main characters are a little flat. You know, like the heart of the story is when an old character dies, not when a new character learns something about themselves. Or maybe it's kind of both. They're trying to do both at the same time. So again, like that's just my critique. It's like it's two intentions in one film, and I think that just causes things to get really confusing, I guess.
I think I hear what you're saying, but I don't. I think with Luke, I can't agree that he was flat. I think he was,
no, like Rey and Finn and.
But
like,
you said with the old characters, they're flat, and I'm saying like I don't think Luke was very flat at all in The Last Jedi. But
no, that's what I'm saying. He was the most interesting character, and that took away from the plot of the story, which was driven by the young characters, you know, or it should be.
Yeah,
that's the weirdness.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't envy their task at all.
Oh yeah, I mean, I couldn't do a better job. I'm not. Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I wonder too, like if the prequels had been more successful.
Yeah.
At like being just good movies, that I think this trilogy would have looked a lot differently because it would have looked a lot different in the end. Because right now they were just like we don't even want to come back unless we remind people why Star Wars is awesome. And because people didn't feel like Star Wars was awesome after the prequels. And so, you know, I think to some degree we have, you know, the kind of redundancy that The Force Awakens had, even though I think The Force Awakens is a lot of fun and a really good movie overall.
Yeah, I like it. It's good. Yeah.
I think it kind of was what it was because people were so soured from the prequels. You know, they were just like, we just want to remember Star Wars is cool. And so we kind of got a rehash.
Yeah, kind of almost a soft reboot.
But my argument has always been that, like, most people, what's funny is The Force Awakens comes out. Fans immediately start decrying how it's just basically A New Hope ripped off again. So like, we need something new. Move on. You know, like, we want new things. So then The Last Jedi's like entire hypothesis is we should burn it all down and move on, and then everyone's pissed off. And but also I think I've talked about this on that talk with Doug too. Like, I think the mistake everyone makes when they watch The Last Jedi is that they think the movie is about burning everything down, and it's not. It's about a character. Yeah, it's about a character who thinks everything should be burned down in Kylo and in Luke. In that Kylo at the end of the movie doubles down on that position, and Luke comes back to the conclusion that no, the past does matter. And
it's sad that people miss that.
Yeah, but you know, because the stuff in the trailer is the let the past die, kill it if you have to. I'm like, yeah, he's the villain of the story.
Yeah.
Right.
No, you're right.
I'm not realizing he threw the bomb back into the conversation. He's in the comments talking about how he threw a bomb in as he left. We're back on Star Wars.
Nice. Good like that. No, I think I can agree. The thing is, the problem with me is that I can agree with most of the people that like The Last Jedi, I think, in terms of like what the story's trying to do, you know, what it's subverting and what it isn't. But
sometimes it's okay not to like it, you know, like.
Well, thanks.
I don't care if you don't like it. I think I don't like when people add to it an entire political agenda that I just don't think exists.
Yeah.
Or if it does exist, I think it's unintentional. I don't think Rian Johnson was sat down with like some vast conspiracy to disparage men and stuff or something like that. Like, I just don't. I mean, if that were the case, why does the movie end the way it ends? Why is Poe the leader of the Resistance? Why, you know, why is it Yoda that changes Luke's mind, not Rey? You know, I mean, the one case you really get to make is, you know, Rose is kind of that to Finn, you know, but and her character is just generally weak throughout the movie anyway. So
yeah.
But I just think that I just don't like that end of the conversation. If you don't like it, you don't like it. You don't have to like it. Just don't turn it into a whole SJW war type thing, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And I wouldn't appeal to that myself. Yeah, I would just my own thing is that it's just it's trying to give you everything you love and like about movies you've already seen, and spend a lot of time giving you that, and then at the same time trying to help you to move on to these characters that they spent a lot of time and money trying to make interesting.
Right.
And that's difficult. Yeah, so I don't think they were trying to subvert the male characters so much as trying to give you what happened in Empire Strikes Back and in Return of the Jedi, just again, but in a new way that seems like, I don't know, that seems surprising, I guess. Instead of just giving you like the Han Solo movie or Rogue One that isn't trying to pattern a movie you've already seen, you know. Like that would have subverted expectations. Like just give a movie that felt like Rogue One, like maybe just with better characters. Maybe, I don't know, characters that were more interesting or a more exciting first act. I think a lot of people critique Rogue One for that. But if they had given you a second part to this trilogy, it just didn't look like the previous movies. You know, it was like, okay, there's a slow chase. They're running. They don't have the fuel to hyperspace out, just like Empire. You know? Like you don't even do that. Just take a page entirely out of something else. Then then people wouldn't even be worried about like, oh, okay, we've got Luke as the Yoda figure. How does he shape up compared to Yoda? You know, and you're constantly comparing it to the movie you already love.
Well, people just didn't like that Luke was such a kind of, I guess. Yeah, he was broken, but I was just like, I don't know, he's a person. Like,
yeah, I liked that. I thought it was,
you know,
it was probably one of the better parts of it.
Yeah, I mean, Luke and his whole scene with Yoda, I think, was just great. Like, the whole conversation about, you know, failure, the greatest teacher is, you know, all that stuff. It's just, I don't know, man. Like, at the end of the day, I think at the end of the day, I'm always like, Star Wars is a pretty clunky franchise.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, like, it's not, we're acting like this thing is like high art here, and it's kind of not.
Yeah.
Like, I love it. It's my favorite franchise, like, period.
Yeah.
But I'm also like, this is the same movie where Luke kisses Leia on the mouth through 2 films, and then George Lucas somehow convinces us all he had in mind that Leia is his sister from the very beginning. It's like, no, bro. Either you got some disturbing tendencies going on in your head, or you just figured it out by the 3rd movie.
Yeah.
So
that's a great point.
In fact, though, but no. So even in Empire, Obi-Wan says in Empire there is another. So he knew, and at least by Empire. And he's just got sisters kissing brothers full on the mouth. Like, bro.
That's true.
I end up going like, guys, like, this is not the work of genius we're all pretending it is. Like,
it's the most expensive, well-known indie film of all time, indie franchise series. And somehow it's being pretty successfully, I guess, turned into a huge corporate entity.
Yeah,
and there's something to be said for that.
Kelson's in the chat saying everything created has an underlying agenda. Whether people are conscious of it when they implement it is debatable, but it's unrealistic to pretend that one isn't present. Not disagreeing with that statement. I'm just saying the agenda of The Last Jedi was not men are bad. The message of, at least in my opinion, has nothing to do with that. The agenda of it was, should we burn everything down and start over again?
Yeah.
That was the conversation the movie was having. Somewhere along the line, people have also injected that Disney had it out for men, And I just don't think that's what happened. Like, or at least consciously, I don't think it's what happened. I think a lot of people read into that. It also didn't help that you had some of the writers of Star Wars, not Rian Johnson, other writers within the Star Wars group, people making comments that were along those lines. Like when you had Gary Whitta come out after Rogue One and say the Empire is a bunch of he said the Empire is a bunch of white supremacist groups. Is a white supremacist group, and the rebels are a bunch of anti-fascists led by women. Like, what are you even saying, dude? Like, you know. Yeah. But
in the timing of that, to say that then in 2015 or whatever.
Yeah, it just, to me, like, those are the comments that are particularly, maybe, but I just don't think it's the case. And I mean, in general, I'm just tired of everybody finding a boogeyman under everything. Just stop it.
I'm sure Disney is tired of that too. And so I'm pretty sure whatever episode 9 is going to be, and who knows how they're going to deal with that, that they're going to, I mean, hopefully not give it something safe. I don't want something safe. I don't think anyone does, but something that, I don't know.
I imagine it'll at least be really satisfying.
Yeah. I just want to be satisfied. Like, yeah.
And that's what J.J. Abrams, I think, excels at, is being satisfying.
That's very true. He's great at that. I could watch Super 8. Maybe not the ending, but I could watch.
What? I will throw you off a bridge. What are you?
Oh, no. I could watch most of Super 8 any day of the week.
I love all of Super 8, and I will not entertain your argument.
Take out the spider gorilla, and I'm sold.
Nope. Throw you off the bridge.
The minute you brought up Super 8, I was like, oh, Matt, no.
Yeah. You're like looking at the time. You're like,
I gotta go
tonight. Yeah.
I do need to go ahead and get off, but
yeah. We can wrap it up.
It's good drawing with you.
Before you go, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Okay. I meant to bring this up when Ben was on, and then we somehow got on to another topic.
Oh yeah, I derailed you.
No, it's fine. I don't know how it got derailed, but we were talking about traveling for shows and stuff. I got Johnny. I talked to you some about the Great American Homeschool Conventions or whatever, and I've emailed them about booth space. It costs $550 for an 8x10 booth space. I don't want to spend $500.
No.
But I wanted to see if there might be some folks willing to maybe go in with me and split a space. So I didn't know if that might be something you were potentially interested in, or if we know anyone that might want to travel and just like get 3 or 4 artists to just take the space for the weekend. Where it's down to like $175 or something like that a person.
Yeah. That's a generous offer. Unfortunately, like, I don't have any product to sell. But
that's true.
That would be the sort of thing that I would definitely jump on. I would say yes. If I had a book, I'd say yes.
Fine. I didn't know what your thoughts were on it, John. I know we talked about it briefly, but don't feel like we gotta commit to anything here. If you want to think, or if you just answer as no, then just tell me no. But if you want to think about it, we can talk about it.
That's something to think about.
I don't know when we have to sort it all out. So, like, I was going to bring it up to Ben if he wanted to consider traveling, although he's got one probably in the state of Texas, so he doesn't have to travel that far.
This is true.
But, and I was going to ask Mike Mayhack about it as well, because he was interested in potentially just tabling it in general. But I just want to figure out what the heck I'm going to do about it. Like, I was not expecting $500 and some to be the answer to that question.
Yeah.
Yeah, for a homeschool tabling thing.
Well, I think the difference is they don't have an artist alley the way most comic conventions are. It's just booth space. And so, a normal booth space is going to cost a few $100.
It's going to be vendors, publishing houses, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, they can afford it.
I mean, it's definitely something I think, I just don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm like, if I traveled to Orlando for this show, I'd probably spend $500 between like paying for a hotel room and food and all this stuff. And it's in Jacksonville, so I wouldn't have to pay for all the traveling expenses, but it still feels like just a lot of money that I don't have to spend. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I guess agents don't have publicity or marketing budgets, do they? I mean, they could give you.
No, that's that's more of the publisher's responsibility. Yeah. But I mean, and honestly, like she's not doesn't have anything to do with Adamsville, so.
No,
I figured those, but even like if I had a publisher for my next book, you know, that would be more the publisher's job to like put me up in a hotel, make sure I have a spot. That's not really her job.
Yeah,
her job is just to collect a portion of the profits and help us get good deals and look out for new work for me. But yeah. But all right. Well, I mean, Johnny, if you want to consider it, let me know.
Okay.
But I'm gonna try to figure out what.
I mean, that's a great market to get into.
I want to do it so bad because I imagine I will sell a lot of books, and it will be good. I'm somewhat tempted to just go ahead and pull the trigger anyway. Just I'm interested to see what it looks like. But $500 is a lot of money. So
yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, you would be successful there, but yeah, do you want to pay that?
Right. All right, guys. Well, I know it's late. I'm probably get ready for bed too, so I'll let y'all go.
Cool.
All right. Well, y'all have a good night.
Yeah. Fun time with you guys.
All right. It's been awesome. Later.
Yeah.